Mayor and Council, for the record, Mark Muerth, President of the Cape Coral Professional Firefighters. I did just receive a text that there is no audio on channel 98. I don't know if that's something that they can fix right now or not, but needless to say, somebody said that there's no audio going through. Second thing I'd like to report is the fact that late Friday evening we were able to TA an agreement between the firefighters and the city that will be voted on here hopefully within a short period of time. Thirdly, I'd like to submit for the record something we brought to you late this afternoon with regards to a censure of a council member. Here this evening I am going to modify it a little bit so that I don't call out that particular council member, but I would like to read it for the record. Whereas the Cape Coral Professional Firefighters Local 2424 of the International Association of Firefighters was established March 6th, 1975, and is the sole representative for the men and women of their profession that protect the residents and visitors in the city of Cape Coral. And whereas the Cape Coral Professional Firefighters Local 2424 of the International Association of Firefighters has tried continually to be progressive in bargaining, charitable work, and standing up for the profession against attacks, both verbal and actionable. And whereas a council member has now continually purported to be an expert both publicly and privately in the field of fire and emergency service delivery, and whereas attempts to research his history as a professional firefighter have only led to establish a short history as a volunteer in Illinois, as well as employment with multiple private ambulance services, and whereas this councilman relocated in Florida, in which he worked for Lee County EMS, where he received reprimands, complaints, as well as recommendation for termination due to allegations of falsifying the status of an ambulance, delaying the response to an emergency call, failure to transport a patient to the nearest appropriate hospital, abandoning co-workers on calls, smoking on calls, and refusing to complete probationary employees' evaluations as required by the collective bargaining agreement. And whereas this council member has continually attacked both publicly and privately the wages, hours, terms, and conditions of our members, and attacked the professionalism and courage of our leadership and membership in the Cape Coral Professional Firefighters Local 2424 of the IAFF, now therefore be it resolved, this councilman be censured by the Cape Coral Professional Firefighters Local 2424 of the IAFF for his continued false claims to the public and his constituents as being an expert in the field of fire and emergency services, and his continual attacks both publicly and privately on the leadership of the Cape Coral Professional Firefighters Local 2424 of the IAFF and wages, hours, terms, and conditions of firefighters. And be it further resolved that this resolution be delivered to the Mayor and Council of the City of Cape Coral, and be it further resolved that this resolution be submitted to the 67th Annual Florida Professional Firefighters Convention in Jacksonville, Florida. Now I know when I go sit down, this council member is going to want to respond to these comments. I would suggest that he just swallow his medicine, accept the fact that these statements have been discovered in public record, which we have retained. Thank you.
Mr. City Manager, may I address one of your employees and ask him to come up to the podium? Thank you. Mr. Muerth, could you come up to the podium for us? Well, Mr. Muerth doesn't want to answer questions, so I'll answer them for him. The question I would ask Mr. Muerth is, Mr. Muerth's presentation, ladies and gentlemen, was accused of me, Chris Chulakes-Leetz. He was kind enough to follow council rules and not use a council member's name, but no sense playing games here, since he already did his interviews with the news before the council meeting ever started. So I'll ask you this question, Mr. Muerth. How many times in the last 20 months, Mr. Muerth, have you asked to sit down and review my credentials and my history? Answer, none. Next question, Mr. Muerth, in the last 20 months, how often has Local 2424 or any member of your local requested that I sit down with them and review my history or credentials with them? Answer, Mr. Muerth, none. 20 months ago, Local 2424 during the campaign sent me a list of, I believe it was 10 or 11 questions. I answered those questions fully and completely. Didn't I, Mr. Muerth? Yes, you did, Councilmember Leetz. The last question said, do you have any questions for us? I listed 3 questions. Have you responded to my questions, Local 2424? The answer is, in 20 months, no, we never responded to your questions. So, for you to make these allegations, positions, you're wrong, Mr. Muerth. I can prove everything I've got. I would ask you one more question, since you're such an experienced firefighter. What is a piercing nozzle, Mr. Muerth? Have you worked with a piercing nozzle? Just wondering, I don't know. Actually, they weren't very common after 1985. So, I'm all done with Mr. Muerth. You can sit down, sir. We're all done. No, Mr. King, I've asked the questions I wanted, so we're all set with him now. So, thank you, Mr. Muerth. You made your choice before.
Mr. Mayor?
I still have the floor, Mayor. May I continue? Thank you, Mr. Muerth, for answering those questions. So, if you would like to sit down at any time in the future, please set an appointment. I'll be happy. I already reviewed my credentials with a couple of the news media, so you'll be able to catch it on the 6 o'clock and possibly the 10 o'clock. So I have no concerns about that. And if you want to continue to throw people under the bus, you better be careful who you throw, because you'd be surprised at how many people will end up under that bus. So, and as far as the CC,
Muerth, Heather Mazurkowitz.
Mark Muerth, President, Local 2424, Cape Coral Professional Firefighters. I'm returning this evening at Mayor's request. Last week a question had been asked of me, or several questions by Councilmember Leetz. I'm here to respond to some of those questions, but a couple other things too. First off, let me start by explaining who I am and who I am not while I am up here. Who I am not is a city employee. I am not a lieutenant on an ALS engine. I am the Union President. I represent nearly 200 paid professional firefighters that protect the city of Cape Coral. I would ask that you keep that into consideration whenever asking me questions, not from a city employee standpoint, but from the Union President. Second to that, I'd just like to inform you that I recently came back from Jacksonville, where we had our state convention, where in fact over 300 delegates representing 24,000 paid professional firefighters have supported our censure of Councilman Leetz. And finally, to specifically the questions that was asked last week that I am returning here to respond that Mr. Leetz had with regards to the unions. You know, he continues to say that he had asked us some questions, one of which was, would the union support a fire department run ALS transport? I don't know if it is that he does not recall, but shortly after he was elected, I sat down with him in his office. We went over several different things. One of those was ALS transport run by the fire department, where I told him, yes, in fact, we would be supportive of it, provided that it's done right, provided that it doesn't take away from the fire department. Second, would the union support a residential fire sprinkler ordinance? I had explained to him that I would have to run that one by our union members. It was the first that I had heard of it. I mentioned to him that I figured he'd get some opposition, probably from the building department. He agreed, but he felt that safety was more important. I have yet to see an ordinance, but I know that was something that he had some concern over. Finally, in the same meeting, he had asked if the union would take a vote of no confidence on our current fire chief, Chief Van Helden. I had told him at the time I didn't think we would. We didn't have a lot of discussion over it. He felt that Chief Van Helden was a nice guy, but didn't make a very good fire chief. Also, last week, you had asked if we had ever asked about your credentials. Yes, in fact, we did. When the union held their own town hall meeting, open to the public, so that we could give them all kind of information and kind of talk about what it is we do and how much it costs to run the fire department. Mr. Leetz was in attendance. My vice president asked him right there, would you in fact kind of tell us a little bit about your history? Mr. Leetz chose to stand up, say that this was not the time or place, and then subsequently left the meeting. Finally, I'm not sure whether it was sarcasm or whether he was serious, but he had asked whether I know what a piercing nozzle is. Yes, in fact, I know what a piercing nozzle is. I'm probably one of the few members of our department that has actually used a piercing nozzle in an application. And then finally, I don't want to keep coming back week after week, but when the mayor or members of council need to be held accountable about false or misleading statements made about the firefighters, it is my duty and my responsibility to get up here and hold you guys accountable. Plain and simple. Thank you.